All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, and welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Nancy Solari, founder of Living Full Out. Nancy started her company in 2008, and as a certified life and business coach, she provides the tools needed to stay positive when feeling overwhelmed or lacking balance in life. At Living Full Out, they motivate their audience to ambitiously burrow through hardships to reach success. This philosophy was brought about by her experience with retinitis pigmentosa, an eye disease she was diagnosed with at 16 years old that has now left her legally blind. Although she thought her eyesight would be the biggest hindrance in her life, she soon learned that more was to come. Through witnessing domestic violence between her parents, being sexually harassed in the music industry, undergoing 5 miscarriages, battling suicide, and experiencing infidelity, she understood firsthand how difficult life can be. Due to her past, she could relate to those who are dealing with situations of crisis and provide suggestions for them to overcome these setbacks. She is the host of the Living Full Out weekly show, which has contributed to Good Morning America and Entertainment Tonight. So without further ado, please help me welcome Nancy Solari. Good evening, Nancy. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, it is my pleasure, and I'm excited that we're here this evening getting this accomplished. So why don't you tell the audience just a little bit more about yourself? I know I wrote I read a lot about here, your bio, but I definitely like for you to just share a little bit more and tell us what you got going on.
Absolutely. Well, your bio did cover a lot of it. Thank you. Like so many of us, we've all go through different challenges. Obviously, for me, going blind was not in the cards originally as a child, nor was, watching my family break apart due to divorce, my mom go through breast cancer, and all the different things that, as a child were really heavy on my heart. And then later on to experience the financial loss, infidelity, infertility, you name it. And what I took from all that, though, is that, a lot of times we learn about the survival skills that we have. We learn about our inner strength. And that's really what I pulled from all these experiences and why I created Living Full Out, so that, others could kind of connect the dots in their own lives and be able to thrive.
Yeah, you're right. You definitely went through a lot at a very young age, and I think that definitely, provided you the strength that you have today. But, being that you did go through all these things, and obviously, you were very young and you were able to see, and then being a teenager, you find out that you're no longer able to see, you're legally blind and so forth. And then, of course, all these other things. But I guess the thing that what I'm trying to understand is that all of the tragedy that you had surrounding you, how could you have been so inspired, and what encouraged you to help others? And then also, I know you were helping your mother because you said you were a very strong person. How did you have the strength to do all that? What encouraged you to do that?
I would say it's very interesting because sometimes we have to look at what we are naturally good at. Like, I'm a natural good listener. And even as a little girl, I think I was always that way and kind of curious. And what I have learned over time is that when I get at a crossroad and I don't know which way to go, or when I'm having a hard day and I need somebody to turn to either listen or cry, I have found that it is the people in our lives that mean everything. And even as a little girl, I didn't go blind alone. I had 2 sisters that also had retinitis pigmentosa along with me. And we were kind of the 3 blind mice in some respects. But we hung in there and we knew each other's journey, and we kind of lost our vision together. And when I've gone through breakups or financial loss, it's interesting. A friend of mine a couple years before me will have gone through the same thing, or a couple years after me, someone will have gone through it, and I can help them. And so it's really just kind of opening our eyes as wide as we can and listening to see, where we can be support for others. But also I kind of had to be vulnerable and turn to those in my life for the support that I needed. And a lot of times it comes down to asking for help. That's the hardest part, right?
Right.
We feel like it's law. We feel like, we're burdening somebody. But at the end of the day, it's the hardships that really connect us all.
Right. And you're right. Asking for help, that's the key word. But it just dawned on me that, you talked about the fact that you weren't alone. When you say you really weren't alone, you weren't. I didn't realize that your other sisters also have the same disease, same eye disease. So I can't even fathom, how your mother had to handle all that. But then you all three, I think, took the strength from each other to also get through what you were going through and have gone through all these years. And the thing I do agree with you is that, when we're so strong and used to doing everything on our own, having to ask for help. But the thing I noticed, the best part about what you just said is that you realize that you weren't alone, and not so much because of the family, but because there's so many other people when you communicate and have these conversations that you realize that there's somebody else who's gone through either something similar or the same, but you could find a way to help them get through all of that.
Yes, absolutely. And, the other thing I think is important for like your audience, as something I've heard as well, is we just kind of have to trust each step of our journey. And it's kind of been interesting going blind because, I can't just barrel through a room, with full confidence. I kind of have to walk as confident as I can. But, I hit the couch sometimes. I run into the wall sometimes, right?
Right.
And in life, sometimes we're going to hit the couch of life. We're going to hit the wall of life, right? And
that is true.
It doesn't mean you never walk into that room. You have to go in and you just, do the best you can.
You're right. But then it also teaches you to learn to utilize your other senses that a lot of times that we don't normally use because we're so used to having the ability to see. And if it was vice versa, if you had the ability to see but not the ability to hear, we always use more than the other. So you have been able to learn how to use all the tools that surround you and all the resources, which, like you said, when you come up against that wall, you know that there's another way you can actually go through it, not just go around it. So, I think that's amazing resources and tools to have and to think about, because we are a lot of times as humans, we limit ourselves on what we can do. And that's with everything in life, even if we didn't have any physical issues, to have to deal with. But so the thing I wanted to find out, though, is that your business is still fairly new. What were some of the challenges that you've had to face with this business that you have about living full out?
Well, actually, our business has been around since 2008. So we're going on 11 years. So, but it's interesting. In building Living Full Out, again, I feel like it mirrors life, right? You have to walk before you run. So you can have a big vision for your life. You can have a big vision for your company, but you can't realistically do everything at one time. And so it's kind of putting together what is the most important thing, in the moment, what would mean the most. And so when we first started at Living Full Out, coaching was our first thing. I wanted to make sure that I was able to be there one-on-one with people. And then we opened it up to speaking, and then we opened it up to broadcasting in terms of the radio show and all that. But again, that's Living Full Out, kind of stacking itself up, growing. But in life, the same thing. We can't have that perfect relationship without dating a few people first, right? You've got to kiss a couple frogs to find your prince. Or, sometimes we don't find that perfect home. How we've lived a few other places. I'm like, I'd love to go in it. Or I need a big bedroom, right? You just kind of learn what you need. And so that's actually been one of the gifts that I've learned from building Living Full Out, is just how much building a business has replicated, building our lives.
Right. And that's true. You definitely have to crawl before you can, walk and run, as I always say. So there's definitely that tier level that you have to go through in a new business. And, as we all know, as part of being a business, if you don't go through some lumps and bumps in it, you're not going to ever really be able to grow, and you will usually stay stagnant because you won't know what it is that you need to do better of. And in life, this is pretty much what it's about. It's always taking those small steps to work and to improve whatever it is that we're trying to improve within our lives. But the one thing I do want to kind of jump back into is I want to talk a little bit about some of the other personal things that you had gone through within this huge circle of life, beyond the domestic abuse that you had dealt with and had seen and witnessed with your family. I want to talk a little bit about some of the other things, such as the music industry. You talked a little bit in your bio about being sexually harassed in the music industry. And that is a huge industry that most people, feel that if they can sing, everybody wants to be a star, right? So, and as we all know, being a star is not always glamorous. So talk a little bit about how those experiences have also moved you forward into doing what you're currently doing today and how you're helping others on that. And whether they're in that industry or not.
Absolutely. Personally, I think everybody should follow their dreams. And it was a dream of mine to sing. And so it was, I will just say, awesome. It was great. I mean, I remember going to pre-Grammy parties, and here I was in the studio putting together my demo and then an album, and just hanging out with people that were celebrity in nature. And all of that was fascinating, right? But then there's the behind the scenes of it that you don't know until you're in it. The sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it's true. Mm-hmm. It's real. And, there were so many people around me that were doing drugs and just as casual as you'd have a Coca-Cola, right?
Right.
It'd be a different kind of Coke, right?
Right.
Right. So the Coke is the theme, but or a lot of times there's the selling out. There's a lot of people that will kind of manipulate or negotiate what they're willing to do to get noticed, or hey, he can get me a deal or get me a contract or get me in front of the person I need to be. And I don't know. At one time I was at this party, and it was a pre-Grammy party, and I just went into the bathroom. I looked in the mirror and I just said to myself, these are not my people. These are not my people. They're very successful. I'm sure if I hung in there, I would either have been a super, super famous person, or I would have a drug addiction. I'm not really sure. But I knew that I wasn't meant to stay in that world. So that's when I segued out, actually, and went into real estate.
Oh, wow. Now that's a huge jump. That's very different.
That was a jump. Yeah. It's interesting. At the time when I was looking to make that jump, I knew that the music industry wasn't quite the right fit. I felt a little bit like Goldilocks, right? The porridge is too hot, it's too cold.
Right.
But I knew eventually I'd find my way. And I went into real estate. I had a boyfriend at the time who said, you know what, with your personality, you would do great. And again, it was amazing. I mean, I'd never seen checks that were so big. I was like, what? This is crazy. Mm-hmm. But even in real estate, I that's really where I got to watch people interact with each other. What broke up marriages? Sometimes it was the hardwood floors. It was living in a house that's being remodeled, or watching people fight over money, or it was just amazing. So real estate taught me a lot about how people interact with each other, but also there were a lot of people that felt limited in their dreams, especially being in the LA market. A lot of people felt they could never buy a home. And that's a limiting belief, because you can't buy a home. You might not buy it in LA, but maybe in the outskirts, in a neighboring city. You know what I mean? So I just thought it was such an interesting time in my life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely interesting time in your life. And I think that when you kind of put it all together, it comes to a point where you realize that, okay, are we willing to sell our soul on one end just so we can have the fame and fathom that we all think is the coolest thing to see? Because we look at people on TV and we think, oh, I want to be this, I want to do this. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with living your dreams. But in every dream, if you don't have the right path to follow, then you're definitely you can find yourself in areas of doing things that you would not normally do, because that's just not your personality. But it's those things of, hey, well, I got to keep up with everybody else, or, people are going to think of me differently. They're not going to want to be a part of me, those types of things. But so that having the courage to know that you love to do something, but to be able to walk away makes you a much bigger person, much richer person than having to be a part of something that that's not right for you. And it's really no different than, I think, than any business, whether it's in real estate or anything that we do in life, that when you realize your purpose and know that you can function and be just as good as the person that you are now, and be even better because you were making the right decisions, that makes it a better person. And that actually makes you a better person to be able to communicate with other people and make them realize what their true purpose is in life. And as you say, living full out, but doing it the right way.
Absolutely. And the key ingredient, again, comes down to those people in our life. Finding those people that will be anchors. There's still friends of mine today that I'm good friends with from high school and college. And when I'm out there on stage, they just know me as Nancy from Oregon, right? They kind of anchor me as to who I am.
Absolutely. So, of course, I'm sorry, you're going to say something?
Oh, no. Okay.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say that, I guess in the business that you're in, though, I want you to talk to the audience a little bit more about what Living Full Out really does for the clientele.
Well, Living Full Out, the company. So we're all about motivation. That we're all in, right? Whatever we need to do to get our clients to a place where they feel like they're thriving or they're happy. So first of all, we really pay attention to our delivery methods. We have, for the auditorial learners, we have videos, we have a radio show, we have all these different things that allow them to listen as they learn. And then we also know that some people enjoy reading. They need to see the words for their eyes. They need to experience it that way. So we have our blog and other course content that we provide. And the thing is we really focus on topics that everyday people deal with, finding a job, taking risk in life, finding that perfect relationship, or saving money, you name it. So I always tell people, reach out to us at connect@livingfullout.com, because we just really want to make sure we put out the best content that really hits the mark on what, your community or our community is facing.
That's true. And you're right. And I think I noticed too, when I was reading a little bit about your bio and actually looking up a little bit more about the organization, you actually have people come on as well as guests and talk to other guests so that, you can kind of pair maybe what the topic might be for that evening. Is that correct?
Yeah, we always take like a theme for our show, and people can call in all around the country and get coaching advice on the spot. It's anonymous, or you can give your name, whatever you want to do. But that's really helpful for people that are, just wanting to ask me a really quick question, but maybe they've asked their friends and they're not getting the right answer. I'll tell them the truth, whether it's the same answer or a different answer. Right. And then, we bring on inspirational guests that share with us what they've gone through and how did they survive. And it's just a really great community feel. I would say the Living Full Out radio show is just, it's a special show. Mm-hmm.
And it sounds special. And I like the fact that, people can definitely call in anonymously and not feel like, they're concerned about what other people are going to say, even after, they hear the name of the individual. A lot of times if we just listen and not worry about who the actual person is, we can actually learn more from each other in that perspective. So I definitely think that the program is pretty amazing. And I definitely have to listen in myself and see what's going on that radio show.
Right.
All right.
So it's great.
All right. So I have a couple more questions for you. So if you had one individual who called into your show today and wanted to know more about what it means to come into business, what advice would you give them?
To start their own business or to go into business?
Yes.
I would say number one, follow your passion. So figure out what is it about that particular business that you're excited about. If you want to go into business and own a restaurant, is it because you like food and a particular food so much? Or is it because you're really good at delegating and managing people? And so sometimes you have to figure out, why are you starting the business? For what reason? Like when I started Living Full Out, it was to motivate people, to coach people. So it's finding out, are you starting the business for the right reasons? Because again, if somebody's starting a business because they like the cook, they're going to find that there's so much more to owning a restaurant than just enjoying cooking, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of things that go into it. And so also you want to consider who is the team that you need to build to help make that business happen. So the mistake that a lot of people make is doing it all, right? Mm-hmm. So, you're not the accountant, you're not the attorney, you're not the general manager, you're not the cook. You have to figure out what is your specialty and then find people to join your team that excel at what they're good at. And sometimes it's that letting go process, because a lot of people who own their own businesses, it's hard to give over control. And, my business, again, because I can't see, I do trust people. I'm like, you know what? I know you got this. And, a lot of times I let my team members just, kind of take the lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it makes sense, that, like you said, you have to have some type of plan. You need to understand what it is that, what are you really good at and what are you not really good at? And I love the synopsis you just gave, when it comes to cooking. I always think about that too when people come and talk to me about small business consulting. They think they have the perfect business, they have the perfect idea, and cooking always seems to be a huge one when it comes to wanting to open up a business. And they're like, oh, I make the best chicken. I'm like, okay, well, you and everybody else think that they make the best chicken. Do we really need this in our community? There's all these different things that you have to really make people open up and see and visualize that. Is this more important? What is really that you're trying to accomplish, even if it is cooking or if it is making that best chicken, how are you going to get there? So, definitely great advice when it comes to opening up a business. It's a process. And a lot of times people don't want to take the few minutes or, a few days to sit down and write down some pages of what that process may look like to them, and then come out and get the help versus just jumping right out on their own and starting a business. So absolutely great advice to give. So I have a couple more questions. So do you have any events coming up anytime soon or that you would like to share?
You know what? We are so busy right now with the radio show, and we're trying to put out a book, and we're trying to do all these different things that, that is, I would say, something where there's a lot of different locations and a lot of, you kind of have to check the Living Full Out website to kind of stay tuned on that one. But, one of the things that I want to offer people is to make sure to go to livingfullout.com, because that's where they're going to be, updated on the most current events or radio shows, or, that's where they're going to have the most updated information. And also social media. I do love social media. I think it is an excellent way for us all to get the information and the motivation that we need. And so they can check us out on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, you name it. We'd love to connect with them there.
All right. Well, that sounds like a perfect way to come to an end. But do you have any last words for our listeners that you would like to say?
I just want them to mainly just live full out in business and in life, but try to find a balance. Because what I have learned in my own life and also coaching people is a lot of times we go full throttle in one direction and everything else can go flat, right?
Right.
And it's just really important to find that balance. Maybe it's holding to a schedule. Maybe it's having an accountability partner, whatever that is, to make sure that you're not having a lopsided life, but you're having a thriving life. And then when you do that, now you're living full out.
All right. Sounds perfect. All right. Well, Nancy, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me this evening. I know you have a very busy schedule, but it's always a pleasure talking with you. And for everyone else, we are here every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. You can hear our show live on iHeartRadio and Spotify. But until then, you have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you next time. Good night.